Captain Elias Reeve stood alone on the bridge of the ESS Perseverance, staring at the three-dimensional tactical display that painted his death sentence in glowing crimson. 417 alien warships had materialized around his lone frigate, their weapons locked, their commander's voice already crackling through the comms with a demand for unconditional surrender. Elias didn't reach for the surrender protocol. He reached for the hidden switch beneath his console, the one labeled in faded marker, only if they really deserve it. The question wasn't whether he'd survive the next 60 seconds, it was whether the fleet surrounding him would. The bridge lights dimmed to combat red as the alien transmission flooded every screen. Fleet Commander Zorath's image resolved, a towering figure clad in ceremonial armor, his four eyes gleaming with cold certainty. Behind him, rows of officers stood in perfect formation, their species a patchwork of the galactic Concordat's finest: Viren strategists, Kelthros enforcers, Teeshal navigators. Zorath's mandibles clicked in what Elias had learned to recognize as contempt. "Human vessel," Zorath intoned, his voice resonating through the translator with forced patience, "you are surrounded by 417 warships of the Concordat Third Fleet. Your engines are disabled. Your shields are minimal. Surrender now and your crew will be processed according to civilized protocols." Elias leaned back in his captain's chair, fingers steepled, and let the silence stretch. Around him, his bridge crew, 7 people, half of them barely out of the academy, watched with wide eyes. Ensign Carla Mendez gripped her console so hard her knuckles went white. Lieutenant John Park kept his hand near the weapons station, though the frigate's railguns had been depleted hours ago during their desperate retreat from the mining colony at Kepler 442b. "Captain," Mendez whispered, "what do we do?" Elias didn't answer her. Instead, he tapped the comm panel and replied to Zorath with a tone so calm it could have been mistaken for boredom. "Fleet Commander, I appreciate the offer. Really, I do, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline." Zorath's mandibles flared. "You decline?" "Human, do you comprehend the situation? Your species' pathetic expansion into Concordat space has been tolerated long enough. This vessel will be surrendered or it will be vaporized. Choose." Elias smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of his lips that didn't reach his eyes. "I choose option 3. "There is no option 3, there is now." Elias pressed the hidden switch. The Perseverance shuddered as concealed panels along its hull slid open, revealing row after row of cylindrical pods that had been welded into the frigate's superstructure over the past 6 months. They weren't standard ordnance. They were something the Concordat had never seen before. Autonomous hunter-killer drones, each the size of a soda can, each equipped with a microfusion warhead and a homing algorithm that could prioritize command vessels by analyzing energy signatures and comm traffic. John Park's screen lit up with launch confirmations. "Captain, drone swarm deploying, 1,200 units launching in 5-4, Zorath's image flickered. "What are you?" 3-2, the first wave erupted from the Perseverance like a swarm of angry hornets. 1,200 drones accelerated in perfect synchronization, their drives burning bright against the black. They didn't fly in formation, they dispersed, each unit calculating its own trajectory, each one hunting for the highest value targets. The Concordat sensors registered them too late. By the time the fleet's automated defenses spun up, the drones were already weaving through overlapping fire arcs, too small and too fast to track. Elias watched the tactical display shift from crimson to chaotic orange. "John, status, first wave engaging. Primary targets, command ships. Secondary, flagships. They're prioritizing anything broadcasting encrypted command protocols." Zorath's transmission cut to static as the first explosions bloomed across the enemy formation. A Viren battlecruiser, a kilometer-long beast bristling with plasma cannons, shuddered as 3 drones slipped past its point defense grid and detonated against its bridge tower. The explosion was small, surgical, but it was enough. The ship's command deck vaporized in a flash of white and the vessel began to drift, its automated systems struggling to compensate. Carla Mendez gasped. "They're targeting the bridge crews, only the bridge crews." "That's the idea," Elias murmured. "Take out the decision makers and the rest fall apart." Another wave launched, then another. The Perseverance groaned under the strain, its hull panels sparking as the drone magazines emptied. Across the Concordat fleet, chaos erupted. Capital ships attempted evasive maneuvers, their massive hulls sluggish and uncoordinated. Smaller escorts tried to form protective screens, but the drones ignored them, darting past frigate and destroyer alike to strike at the heart of the command chain. Every explosion was precise, every detonation calculated to sever the Concordat's ability to coordinate. Zorath's flagship, a monolithic dreadnought named the Eternal Resolve, reappeared on the main screen. The fleet commander's face was twisted in fury. "You dare," Elias interrupted. "I dare a lot of things, Commander. Mostly I dare you to rethink your assumptions about humans." Zorath opened his mouth to respond, but the transmission died as a cluster of drones converged on the Eternal Resolve's command spire. The explosions rippled across the dreadnought's superstructure, each one tearing through layers of armor and shielding until the entire spire collapsed inward. The ship didn't explode, it simply went dark, its lights flickering out as emergency systems kicked in. Elias exhaled slowly. "John, how many command ships are still operational?" John Park's hands flew across his console. 70% of flagships and command cruisers are offline or unresponsive. The remaining fleet elements are scrambling, but they're not coordinating. It's a mess. Good. Carla, prep the distress beacon, broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we're willing to negotiate if they stand down. Mendez hesitated. "Captain, I know what we just did," Elias said quietly. "But we didn't destroy their fleet, we decapitated their leadership. Now we give them a choice, retreat or die leaderless." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the frigate's struggling systems. Outside, the Concordat fleet hung in disarray, hundreds of ships adrift or circling aimlessly as junior officers tried to piece together what had just happened. The distress beacon transmitted for 3 minutes before the first response arrived. It wasn't a surrender, it was a fragmented transmission from a Kelthros cruiser, its acting captain demanding to know who had authorized the attack and whether the human vessel was willing to stand trial. Elias deleted the message and waited for the second response. It came from a TSHAL navigator aboard a drifting battleship. The navigator's voice was calm, almost clinical. "Human Captain, your actions have violated 17 Concordat protocols. However, your tactical execution was remarkable. We request clarification. Do you seek total annihilation or are you open to dialogue?" Elias leaned forward. "Dialogue, but only if your fleet pulls back to a safe distance. 500 kilometers minimum, no weapons locks. If I see so much as a targeting laser, we finish what we started." There was a pause, then, "Acknowledged, we are withdrawing." John Park watched the tactical display as the Concordat ships began to drift backward, their formations breaking apart as individual captains prioritized survival over protocol. "Captain, they're actually doing it. They're falling back. They don't have a choice," Elias said. "Without command structure, they're just a bunch of scared crews trying not to get killed by their own side's confusion." Carla Mendez finally found her voice. "Captain, what happens when the Concordat regroups? When they send reinforcements? We just made ourselves the most wanted ship in the galaxy." Elias stood, moving to the viewport where the distant stars glittered against the void. "We buy time. The colonies at Kepler 442b and Gliese 581g need to evacuate. The Concordat wanted to use this fleet to blockade the entire sector, cut off Earth's outer settlements, and force a surrender. We just shattered their timetable. Now they have to rebuild their command chain, reassign officers, and figure out what the hell just happened. That buys us weeks, maybe months." "And then," John asked, "and then Earth's reinforcements arrive or we run, whichever comes first." The TSHAL navigator's voice returned. "Human Captain, we have withdrawn to the requested distance. Are you prepared to discuss terms?" Elias glanced at his crew. They looked exhausted, terrified, and something else, something that hadn't been there an hour ago. Pride maybe, or hope. He turned back to the comm. "I'm listening." The navigator's tone remained neutral. "The Concordat Third Fleet no longer possesses operational command authority. However, individual ship captains retain autonomy under crisis protocols. Several captains wish to negotiate a temporary ceasefire to recover survivors from damaged vessels. In exchange, we will not pursue your vessel for 72 hours. 72 hours, Elias repeated. "And after that, the Concordat will decide your fate, but for now, we prioritize our wounded." Elias considered. 72 hours was more than he'd expected. It was enough time to reach the relay station at Tau Ceti, transmit a full report to Earth Command, and potentially link up with the S Vigilant, a destroyer that had been patrolling the outer rim. He nodded to himself. Agreed, you have 72 hours to recover your people. After that, we're gone. The transmission ended, the bridge fell silent again, and this time the quiet felt different, heavier, but not oppressive. Carla Mendez slumped in her chair, letting out a shaky breath. John Park rubbed his eyes and muttered something about needing coffee. Elias returned to his seat and pulled up the damage report. The Perseverance was a mess. Half its maneuvering thrusters were offline, the drone magazines were empty, and the reactor was running at 60% efficiency. But it was still flying, still breathing, still defiant. "Captain," Carla said quietly, "why didn't you tell us about the drones?" Elias glanced at her. "Because if the Concordat had intercepted even a hint of what we were carrying, they would have blown us apart before we got close enough to deploy. The fewer people who knew, the safer we all were. And now we run and hope we live long enough to make it count." John Park laughed, a brittle, exhausted sound. "You know, Captain, when I signed up for this mission, I thought it'd be boring. Survey work, maybe some asteroid mining. I did not expect to start a war." Elias allowed himself a faint smile. "We didn't start it, John, we just changed the odds." The next hour passed in controlled chaos as the crew worked to stabilize the frigate systems. Elias monitored the Concordat fleet from his console, watching as rescue shuttles darted between damaged ships and emergency beacons lit up across the battlefield. He felt no satisfaction in the carnage, only a grim determination to make sure it hadn't been for nothing. At 19:00 hours, the Tees Hal navigator transmitted again. "Human Captain, we have recovered 90% of our survivors. We will honor the ceasefire. However, I must inform you, the Concordat High Council has been notified of this engagement. They will not be pleased." "I didn't expect them to be," Elias replied. "Safe travels, navigator." The transmission ended and Elias set the Perseverance on a course for Tau Ceti. As the frigate's engines ignited and the stars began to blur, he allowed himself to exhale fully for the first time in hours. They'd survived. Against impossible odds, they'd survived, but survival was just the beginning. The Tau Ceti relay station hung in orbit around a gas giant, its modular structure glinting under the pale light of the system's distant star. It was a skeleton crew outpost, 12 people, mostly technicians and comm specialists, designed to amplify transmissions across the 100-light-year gap between the outer colonies and Earth. As the Perseverance limped into sensor range, the station's acting commander, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka, greeted them with a mix of relief and alarm. "Captain Reeve, we've been trying to reach you for 6 hours. What the hell happened out there?" Elias settled into his chair, exhaustion tugging at every muscle. "Long story, Lieutenant. Short version, we just kicked the hornet's nest. I need to transmit a Priority 1 message to Earth Command. Full tactical report, encrypted." Yuki's face appeared on the screen, a young woman with sharp eyes and a furrowed brow. "Priority 1 confirmed. We'll boost your signal, but Captain, you should know, the Concordat's been flooding comms with warnings. They're claiming you committed an act of piracy against a diplomatic fleet." Elias snorted. "Diplomatic? They surrounded us with 400 warships and demanded surrender. That's not diplomacy, that's a prelude to invasion." "I believe you," Yuki said, "but the Concordat's spinning it hard. They're saying you launched an unprovoked attack and killed thousands of officers. Earth Command's going to want answers." "They'll get them, just route the transmission." The next 2 hours blurred together as Elias dictated his report, frame by frame, detail by detail. He included the drone deployment logs, the tactical readings, even the audio of Zorath's ultimatum. John Park compiled the data into a compressed file and Carla Mendez triple-checked the encryption. When it was finally ready, Elias authorized the transmission and watched the relay station's massive dish swivel toward Earth. Yuki's voice crackled through the comm. "Transmission away. Estimated delivery time, 48 hours. "Captain, what's your next move?" Elias rubbed his temples. "We resupply here, patch what we can, and make for Gliza 581G. The colony there needs to know what's coming. If the Concordat's planning a full-scale blockade, they'll hit Gliza next. And if the Concordat shows up here first, then you shut down the relay and scatter. Don't try to fight them, just get your people out." Yuki nodded slowly. "Understood, we'll keep the station hot for as long as we can. Good luck, Captain." The Perseverance docked with the relay station's supply module, and the crew began the painstaking work of transferring reactor fuel, spare parts, and ration packs. Elias stayed on the bridge, monitoring the long-range sensors for any sign of pursuit. The Concordat fleet had honored the ceasefire so far, but he didn't trust it to last. At 22:00 hours, Carla Mendez appeared with 2 mugs of coffee and handed one to Elias. "Captain, you've been awake for 18 hours. You need to sleep." "I'll sleep when we're at Gliza," Elias said, but he accepted the coffee anyway. The warmth of the mug grounded him, a small comfort in the endless cold of space. "Carla, I need you to be honest with me. Do you think we did the right thing?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she sipped her own coffee and stared at the viewport. "I think we did the only thing we could. The Concordat wasn't going to let us walk away. If we'd surrendered, they would have used us as leverage against Earth. And if we tried to run, they would have chased us down and killed us anyway. You gave us a third option. A third option that killed a lot of people. A third option that saved our lives and bought time for the colonies," Carla corrected. "Captain, I've been in the fleet for 6 years. I've seen what happens when we hesitate, when we try to play by their rules. The Concordat respects strength. You showed them strength. That's not cruelty, that's survival." Elias met her gaze. "I hope you're right. I hope so too." The resupply took 4 hours. By 02:00 hours, the Perseverance was ready to depart. Elias gave the order, and the frigate detached from the relay station, its engines burning bright as it set course for Gliza. Behind them, the Tau Ceti relay continued its silent vigil, amplifying Earth's voice across the void. As the stars stretched into lines, Elias finally allowed himself to close his eyes, just for a moment, just long enough to remember what they were fighting for. Gliza 581G hung against the black like a pale green jewel, its single massive continent visible even from orbit. The colony, officially designated New Harbin, was home to 30,000 people, most of them farmers and engineers working to terraform the planet's harsh atmosphere. As the Perseverance descended toward the orbital platform, Elias could see the sprawling agricultural domes and the faint glow of the colony's main settlement. Colony Governor Amir Hassan met them at the docking bay, his expression tight with worry. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his graying beard neatly trimmed, his hands calloused from years of fieldwork before he'd taken the administrative role. "Captain Reeve, we heard the reports. Is it true you destroyed a Concordat fleet?" "Not destroyed," Elias corrected as he stepped off the shuttle. "Disabled, but it won't stay that way forever. Governor, you need to evacuate." Amir's jaw tightened. "Evacuate, Captain, we have 30,000 people here. Our evacuation protocols can handle maybe 5,000 at a time, and we'd need at least 2 weeks to get everyone off-world. We don't have that kind of time." "Then start with the children and the non-essential personnel," Elias said. "Get them on transports and send them to Earth or one of the inner colonies. The Concordat's going to retaliate, and when they do, this colony will be a target." Amir led them through the platform's corridors, his voice low. "Captain, you don't understand. This colony isn't just a settlement, it's a symbol. It's the farthest humanity's ever reached. If we abandon it, we're telling the Concordat they can push us back to Earth whenever they want. And if you stay, you're telling them they can kill you whenever they want," Elias shot back. "Governor, I'm not asking you to surrender. I'm asking you to buy time, evacuate who you can, fortify who you can't, and prepare for the worst." Amir stopped in front of a reinforced door marked Command Center. "I'll call an emergency session with the Colony Council." "But Captain, you need to understand, these people came here to build something. They're not going to leave without a fight." The council chamber was a modest room with a long table and a dozen chairs. The council members, farmers, scientists, security officers looked up as Elias entered. He didn't wait for introductions. He launched into a concise briefing: the Concordat's ultimatum, the drone swarm, the 72-hour ceasefire, and the inevitable response. When he finished, the room erupted in questions. A gray-haired woman named Dr. Lena Kowalski, the colony's chief scientist, raised her hand. "Captain, if the Concordat fleet was disabled, why are we assuming they'll come back? Maybe they'll cut their losses." "Because the Concordat doesn't cut losses," Elias said. "They see this as a matter of prestige. We humiliated them. They'll respond with overwhelming force to reassert dominance." "That's how they operate," A younger man, Marcus Joe, the head of colony security, leaned forward. So what do you suggest? We can't fight a fleet. We don't have warships. You don't need warships, Elias replied. You need defense platforms, automated turrets, and evacuation shuttles. You fortify the orbital platform, set up early warning satellites, and make it costly for them to approach. Meanwhile, you get as many civilians out as possible. Amir stood. Captain Reeve, I appreciate your tactical insight, but this council will decide the colony's fate, not an outsider. We'll convene and vote. You're dismissed. Elias didn't argue. He simply nodded and left the chamber. Outside, Carla Mendez was waiting. Captain, do you think they'll listen? I don't know, Elias admitted, but we've done what we can. Now it's up to them. Over the next 12 hours, the colony descended into controlled chaos. Half the council voted to evacuate, the other half insisted on staying to defend the settlement. Amir brokered a compromise. They'd evacuate children under 12 and non-essential personnel, while the rest would remain to fortify the colony and prepare for a potential siege. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. Elias and his crew helped coordinate the evacuation, loading families onto transports and calibrating the orbital platform's defense systems. By the time the first shuttles launched toward the inner colonies, Elias felt the weight of command settle heavier on his shoulders. These people were counting on him not just to warn them, but to give them hope. At 36:00 hours, John Park pulled Elias aside. Captain, long-range sensors just picked up a signal. It's faint, but it's consistent with Concordat drive signatures. They're 2 days out, maybe less. Elias exhaled slowly. 2 days? That's not enough time. No, John agreed, it's not. Elias returned to the Perseverance and stared at the tactical display. The Concordat was coming, and this time they wouldn't stop at an ultimatum. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation and dread. Elias watched as the colony's remaining population, 22,000 people, dug in. Engineers rigged automated turrets along the orbital platform's perimeter. Scientists repurposed mining drones into makeshift defense units. Farmers stockpiled food and water in reinforced bunkers beneath the main settlement. It wasn't enough to win a war, but it was enough to make a stand. On the morning of the second day, the Concordat fleet arrived. Not 400 ships this time, 700. They materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under Gliese 581 pale light. At their center was a new flagship, the Unyielding Truth, commanded by Fleet Admiral Corvan, a Viren strategist known for his ruthlessness. Corvan's transmission was brief and cold. Human settlement at Gliese 581G, you are harboring the war criminal Elias Reeve and his vessel. Surrender him immediately or we will reduce your colony to ash. Elias stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, now docked at the orbital platform. Amir Hassan stood beside him, his face pale but resolute. Captain, we're not giving you up. This is our fight too. You don't have to fight, Elias said quietly. You can still evacuate. There's time. There's no time, Amir replied. And besides, you gave us a chance. Now it's our turn to give you one. Elias looked at his crew, Carla, John, and the rest of the 7 who'd survived the impossible. He thought about the families he'd helped evacuate, the children who'd boarded shuttles with wide, frightened eyes. He thought about Earth, 30 light-years away, and the reinforcements that wouldn't arrive for weeks. And then he made his choice. John, power up the drone reserves. We're not done yet. John blinked. Captain, we used all the drones. Not all of them, Elias said. Check the cargo bay, section 12. I had a second batch installed before we left Kepler. They're smaller, fewer in number, but they'll do. John's hands flew across his console. Captain, you're serious? We've got another 200 drones. 250, Elias corrected. And this time we're not aiming for command ships. We're aiming for their reactor cores. Amir's eyes widened. That's suicide. If you trigger a chain reaction, then the fleet destroys itself, Elias finished. And we buy the colony enough time to finish the evacuation. Carla stepped forward. Captain, if we do this, the Concordat will never stop hunting us. We'll be outlaws for the rest of our lives. We're already outlaws, Elias said. Might as well make it count. He opened a channel to the Concordat flagship. Corvan's face filled the screen, his 4 eyes narrowed in disdain. Human, have you come to beg for mercy? Elias smiled, the same slow, deliberate smile he'd given Fleet Commander Zorath. No, Admiral, I've come to give you a choice. Pull your fleet back and we'll let you leave. Stay, and I'll do to you what I did to Zorath. Corven's mandibles clicked in amusement. You have no drones left, human. Our intelligence confirms it. You are bluffing. Am I? Elias pressed the switch. The cargo bay doors opened and 250 drones launched into the void. They were smaller than the first wave, their warheads less powerful, but their targeting algorithms were just as precise. They swarmed toward the Concordat fleet, weaving through defensive fire, ignoring escorts, and diving straight for the capital ship's reactor sections. Corven's amusement vanished. All ships, evasive maneuvers, deploy countermeasures. But it was too late. The first drone struck a battle cruiser's reactor core, triggering a catastrophic overload. The ship detonated in a brilliant flash, its shockwave rippling through the formation and destabilizing nearby vessels. Another drone hit, then another. Within 60 seconds, the Concordat fleet was tearing itself apart, reactor cores detonating in chain reactions that consumed ship after ship. Elias watched the carnage unfold, his expression grim. He didn't take pleasure in it. He didn't celebrate. He simply counted the seconds until the colony's evacuation shuttles cleared the danger zone. Corven's transmission returned, his voice ragged. You've doomed us all. The Concordat will never forgive this. I know, Elias said quietly, but my people will live, and that's all that matters. The unyielding truth shuddered as a drone breached its defenses. Corven's image flickered and died. Moments later, the flagship exploded, its reactor core vaporizing in a supernova of light. Elias turned to Amir. Governor, get your people out, now. Amir nodded, his voice shaking. What about you? We'll hold the line as long as we can. Go. The evacuation proceeded in waves. Shuttles launched from the orbital platform, carrying the colony's remaining population toward the inner systems. Elias and his crew stayed on the Perseverance, monitoring the Concordat fleet's disintegration and ensuring no stragglers pursued the refugees. By the time the last shuttle cleared the platform, the Concordat fleet was nothing but debris and fading energy signatures. Elias set the Perseverance on a slow burn away from Gliese 581G, his hands trembling with exhaustion. Carla Mendez sat beside him, her voice soft. Captain, what happens now? Elias didn't answer immediately. He stared at the stars, at the infinite black that had always felt more like home than any planet. Now we disappear. We go dark, change our transponder codes, and hope Earth Command finds us before the Concordat does. And if they don't, then we keep running. And we keep fighting because that's what humans do. John Park laughed, a brittle, exhausted sound. You know, Captain, I think I'm starting to like this job. Elias allowed himself a faint smile. Don't get too comfortable, John. We've got a long road ahead. As the Perseverance vanished into the black, the colony at Gliese 581G began its slow evacuation, carried by the hope that one human's defiance had bought them. And somewhere, 30 light-years away, Earth Command received Elias Reeve's transmission and began to prepare for the war that was coming. A war that would define humanity's place among the stars. A war that one captain had started with a single, impossible choice. 3 weeks later, the S-Vigilant intercepted the Perseverance near the Tau Ceti relay. Admiral Keiko Sato, a veteran of the First Contact War, greeted Elias with a mixture of respect and wariness. Captain Reeve, you've started quite the firestorm. The Concordat's demanding your extradition. Earth Command's debating whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. Elias stood in the Vigilance briefing room, his uniform rumpled, his eyes shadowed. What do you think they'll decide, Admiral? Sato allowed herself a faint smile. I think they'll do both, but for now, you're under my protection, your crew too. We've got reinforcements en route to the outer colonies, and your tactical data is already being integrated into our defense protocols. You bought us time, Captain. That's worth more than any medal. Elias nodded, too tired to feel relief. And the colony at Gliese, evacuated. 22,000 civilians safe in the inner systems. You did good, Reeve, even if you broke every rule in the book to do it. As the Perseverance docked with the Vigilant, Elias allowed himself to exhale fully for the first time in weeks. The war wasn't over. The Concordat would regroup and Earth would have to fight for every inch of space it claimed. But for now, they'd survived. And survival, Elias knew, was the first step toward victory. He looked at his crew, Carla, John, and the rest, and saw the same weary hope reflected in their eyes. They'd started as 7 people on a doomed frigate. Now they were legends. And legends, Elias thought, had a way of changing the galaxy.